Welcome along. We're at Rayners Lane Station. As you can see, this is the Underground Station, or Tube Lines as we call them in London. And we're at the start of Westerley VR Race Series 1, Race 13. And it's the final race of this series, hence the title, Harrow Goodbye. Goodbye because it's the end of Series 1. Don't worry, Series 2 starts immediately, but it's goodbye from Series 1. And we are going to be cycling around Harrow. And Harrow Goodbye. It sounded catchy. I think the Beatles might have had a song with a similar title, but don't let that influence your thinking. Hello, goodbye. So it's goodbye to Series 1 and hello to Series 2, I suppose. Anyway, we're here to preview Race 13, which is the last in the series. And at the time of recording this, we're down to 2 potential winners in the series. But it all starts from scratch in Series 1, Series 2 coming up. When you'll all have a chance. Now, it's interesting, you don't need to be the fastest racer to win the series. You just need to turn up regularly and keep amassing points, because some of the fast racers are likely to miss some of the races. So the top 10's full of some super riders and some people who are just regular riders, and it makes it for an interesting competition, because if you are a super rider and you miss races, you're going to have to finish. It's not so much how far you finish ahead of other riders, but how many places you finish ahead, because points are awarded by place and not by time. So it makes for a very interesting competition. Series 2 will run from November 2020 through to the end of March 2021. And we'll probably start Series 3 after that, although I might have to juggle the dates because of clashes with our Westerley CC real races. We have Wednesday evening races of about 16k, which is why these were set up in the first place, to replace those during the COVID pandemic lockdown. Anyway, enough of that. That's what's coming up. Series 2 coming up. This is a goodbye to Series 1. As I say, at the time of recording this, it's not certain who has won the title, but there's 2 potential people left in it, and we shall see what happens. We'll probably know by the time you watch this, but anyway. So, if you're racing race number 13, and maybe you're jostling for a position in the top 10 in the series or whatever, and it's important to you, you probably are one of those people who strategises, and therefore you go and have a look at the profile of a race beforehand, work out where the attacks come, and what we do provide is these little previews where you can see what it looks like in real life, just to get yourself a feel for what you're racing. Now, this one isn't particularly undulating. It's almost flat all the way, except for one dirty grey big lump in the middle, which is Harrow Hill. And that's why, apart from the fact we're cycling around a lot of Harrow, in fact we're in South Harrow now, is why the title of the race is Harrow Goodbye, because most of it is in Harrow, the rest of it a little bit in Eastcote, and then most of it in Ruislip. But as I say, there's one big lump in the middle, and we're coming up to it shortly. We're in South Harrow now, and as you'll see, rows and rows of houses with bay windows, and you're going to see a lot of those today. But as we approach the next tube station, if you remember, we started at Rayners Lane, and we're going to be passing quite a few underground stations. In fact, actually, we're not going to pass a station on this one. We're going to go under the bridge, but the station's a few hundred metres to our right on a parallel road. So here we are as you go under this railway bridge. This is South Harrow, or the station South Harrow is a little bit further to our right on another road. We are in suburban London, in the northwest corner of London, and cycling around what is mainly Metropolitan line areas, but this is the Piccadilly line here. And as I say, this was built out in the 1930s, and as the railways were developed out this way, they built the houses around them, and this typical bay window 1930s architecture is what you're going to see for most of the ride. Now, as I say, the interesting bit of this is this big lump in the middle of this, and we're coming up to it fairly shortly. It is Harrow on the Hill. Harrow on the Hill is quite an important tube station. It's an intersection. It's not actually on the hill at all, because there was no point building the railway up and over the hill when you could go around the side of it on the flat quite easily. And the station was called Harrow on the Hill because it's next to the hill rather than it's actually on it. And strangely, when you go up the hill, you'll see that it was quite clearly occupied long before the expansion of London came out here, because it's the buildings are a lot older, and it looks like a nice little sort of twee small country town or large village. Now, as we go right off this roundabout, we're beginning the approach to Harrow Hill. Now, Harrow Hill sticks out. You can see it for miles and miles around, because it's an unusual. It just doesn't fit the rest of the topography here. It just sticks out uncharacteristically in an otherwise flat area. So you can see we're slightly going uphill as we go towards Harrow Hill now. If you are in central London and you look out to the northwest, you'll see two things jutting out of the horizon. One is Harrow Hill, and the other one is the big arch at Wembley Stadium, home to the England football team and lots of American football these days as well, because I think the England football team, in fact, might even be playing around the country more often in the future. I'm a Queen's Park Rangers fan, so I don't tend to go there very often. We don't tend to get into cup finals, but never mind that. So as you can see, it's slightly uphill here, and we're just heading up. We're in the foot slopes of the Harrow Hill. We're going to end up at a set of traffic lights at the end of this little road with ever more bay windows. We're going to do a left and an immediate right, and as soon as we turn right, we're on the slopes up to Harrow Hill. Here we are, here are the traffic lights, seasonably red, as they usually are when you're cycling. They tend to change as soon as you take your foot out the cleats, I find. I think they're automated by the sound of you taking your foot out of the cleat. As soon as you do that, it seems to me that the lights change. There we are. Oh, that one's edited. So here we go. Left and then right. And what you'll see as we start going up the hill is that the architecture changes and starts getting a little bit older, because it isn't part of that 1930s expansion of London. So this is the hill. Little tube sign. The station isn't till we go down the other side of the hill. Now you can see it's reasonably steep here. Not horrendously steep. It's not. It's not into double digits or anything like that. But this is where the race is going to take its shape, I think. Now, if you are going to attack, you've probably got your eye on this hill already. This is the place where you're going to certainly shake out some people from the front peloton, I think. I don't always think that's a problem. When I get shaken out of the peloton, I quite often find myself having little private sub races with people further back in the field, and find it just as exciting as if I were in the front. So, the battle for 12th or the battle for 20th can be just as rewarding as a battle for first, believe me. Although if I ever did get first, I suspect it might be a little bit more rewarding, shall we say. So we're grinding up this hill, and as I say, I think this will shed it into subgroups. There is a fast descent afterwards. You might catch up on the descent, but thereafter there aren't really many places either to attack or catch up, I would suspect. As you can see, the architecture getting a little bit older. It's a house that hasn't got any bay windows on your right, and it looks a little bit older than most of the architecture we've seen so far. This one certainly does on the right. So here we are. There's a sign. It tells us that we're just about to turn left into Harrow on the Hill. And as you'll see, as we go through Harrow on the Hill, the buildings do get noticeably older, particularly built around the old school there. The school, Harrow School, is probably the second most famous public school in Britain after Eton College. It certainly sort of has a similar feel about it, and its most famous pupil, I guess, is Sir Winston Churchill, or maybe you can tell me different. But as you go through this small settlement here, you'll see that it's a lot older than the buildings we've been riding through so far, and it has the feel of a quintessential British town, in the countryside somewhere, small town or perhaps large village. You can see nice twee little shops and a feeling of this old country town about it. Very nice too. I suspect that the property prices come with a bit of a premium here. I haven't looked at the local estate agents recently, and as you can see, lots and lots of these older buildings making up Harrow on the Hill, which is in extreme contrast to what you'll see at the bottom, which is more modern, built around the railway station. And as I say, I suspect this has been here for hundreds of years, and the bit at the bottom where the main Harrow town centre is today is more modern. Now, as you can see here, these are beginnings of the buildings of Harrow School. It has that same sort of feel and character as Eton College. I don't know if they are from the same time, but very grandiose buildings and very prestigious. And we start the descent towards Harrow on the Hill. Now, this is going to be fast. We can't see the view to our right because of the sun coming up. I did this early morning before one of our club rides, just to try and get out round before the traffic. As I say, we're not going to see the view out to our right. I'm sure, or I suspect, you could probably see Wembley Stadium from there if you were able to look right. As I say, famously the home of football, certainly in England. I'm sure Scots, Welsh and Irish amongst you will counter that with counterclaims, but Wembley Stadium is famous nevertheless. We go left here. This is Harrow Town Centre. We're at the bottom of the hill. We're now going to go left and ride parallel to the railway lines. That's the Metropolitan line. Harrow on the Hill station will be just to our left. To our right. So we ride parallel to them, just past. We're sort of not going through Harrow Town Centre, which is all one-way systems and choked up with buses and things. So we don't want to go down there. The road to our left there actually takes you up to Harrow on the Hill, but we couldn't ride that one, which I think is more picturesque, but we couldn't ride it because it's a one-way system at the top there. So here we are, just going around the back of Harrow, avoiding the town centre, the shops. But we will find ourselves into some modern buildings very, very soon as we go right over the railway lines. This is the back entrance to Harrow on the Hill station here. You can see just on your right the tube station sign. As we hit the more modern buildings surrounding Harrow centre, or call it a town centre, although it's I don't know whether it really is a town anymore because it's just part of the London sprawl these days. And as I say, we're going to go up over the railway lines. You can see these advertising hoardings on the right, just hiding the railway lines from our view. Not that you wanted to see them, of course. If you do really need to see a London Underground train, then I'm sure if you Google it, there'll be plenty of images. All the trains look the same, so they're not that exciting. Right, so we go right over the railway bridge, and there's another roundabout which we go left to the other side of the railway bridge, and then we head towards North Harrow. Now, that's the fun and games over with now. It's attritional. If you can stay in the pack to the end, great. But you might well get dropped here, and I think this is just going to be fast and furious all the way to the end. There are only two very, very, very minor ascents. They're not even really hills, but there's only two places I can think of that have anything like a rise in gradient. And so therefore, for this second half of the race, you're going to be just fast and furious, either just hanging on or maybe trying to sort of crack the pace and see if you can drop some people off. I think people will get dropped off in this if you can't maintain the fast and furious pace that these 16-kilometre rides do. You only have to drop off momentarily and you can't get back on again. Trust me, it's happened to me so many times. One momentary lapse of concentration, I'm off the back and it's just too fast for me to catch up again. So if you are looking to get a good placing, you might well just go for power here and see if you can shed a few riders. The thing is, the strong riders will stay with it, and ultimately it will come down to the sprint finish to the Polish War Memorial, which is where we end. It's quite an important landmark, the Polish War Memorial, because apart from the commemoration of all the Polish air crew that came over here and pilots and fought in World War II and gave up their lives, it's quite sombre. We always start our Sunday morning club rides from the Polish War Memorial, and not a Sunday goes by where I don't nod towards the memorial, acknowledging the sacrifices made by the brave Polish people who came over and fought with us in World War II in our darkest hour. And yes, I think if you're Polish and living in England, I think you really ought to at least visit it once. And it's always quite nice, quite often waiting for the Sunday club rides. Families will come up to pay their respects, and I think it's nice to know that people who sacrifice so much are remembered. The other reason it's notable, as I say, is we start our club rides there every Sunday morning, and it, of course, is one of those famous junctions on the A40 that, if you listen to the local traffic news, is invariably mentioned at least once every fortnight because of the tailbacks into London reaching the Polish War Memorial Junction. So here we are at North Harrow now. This, again, has its own tube station on the Metropolitan line, the line going up towards Amersham. Not an area I particularly visit, although I live locally here. The only two reasons I ever came to North Harrow, one, where there was a bowling alley just in the building on our right there. Used to have a bowling alley, which is now gone, and you can see by the blue signs turned into a gym now. I'm sure the gym is healthier than the bowling, but nevertheless, it was a nice little social place to go for the bowling alley up there. The second notable thing about North Harrow, and far more important to cyclists, is the wonderful bike shop that, if you can see the clock tower just in front of us, there's a parade of shops after that. There's a bike shop called The Bike Shop, and I jest not, its real name is The Bike Shop. I don't know how they managed to register that name first. It must have been around a long time. But yeah, it's a very good bike shop, especially if you're seriously into road cycling. And that's just on our left in this parade of shops along here. So if you are moving to the area, or if you get flat around this area, that's the place to go and get your bike sorted. So we come out of North Harrow now, and we're going to skirt around towards Eastcote. The only reason you'll have ever heard of Eastcote is because it is on the underground map. And of course, one of the reasons I've stuck all these little tube station signs up in the top left-hand corner is that if you're not from London, it's a lot easier to find your way around London on the tube map, because it's all nice in straight lines, and it's not quite in proportion to real life, but it's a very easy way of understanding the geography of London. And whilst all these roads may be meaningless to you, you can have a quick look on the tube map and see where these tube stations that we're passing actually are. And you'll see that it's all just the northwest top corner of London. And it's fairly flat here, apart from the hill at Harrow. And as I say, this is going to be fast and furious, and you're going to have to be strong to stay with the pack, or be alert. I think if you can draft on the pack, just be alert, because if you do get dropped on this, there are going to be hard times trying to catch up again. Strategically, it's so close to the finish. There's a dilemma. If you get dropped off the pack, do you still ride hard to make sure that the next group doesn't catch you, or do you accept that it's going to be hard work and wait for the next group and take that group and try and draft in that to the finish? The gamble is yours. I've done both successfully, waited for another group and won the sprint, and I've done the other version, which is totally failed, and the next group's gone right past me because I've burnt myself out by being solo, but I've also managed to hang out solo and stay ahead of the next group. So all three can work. You'll have to decide on how you feel on the day. But as I say, fast and furious all the way. There are only two minor ascents, and I don't think they're enough to break a group. They might drop off a really tired rider, but not enough, I think, to split a strong group. I'll identify those when they're coming up. The first is Windmill Hill, which is in Ruislip Manor. Windmill Hill is not, from a cycling point of view, really a hill. I think geographically it is the top of a hill, but it's we're sort of on the high, so as we do Windmill Hill, and the road that's called Windmill Hill, it is only a minor little ascent over the top of what is a larger hill over a larger geographical area. So as we can see, lots of nice bay windows here. This is 1930s London, where it all expanded out with the underground stations and the railways being built. And we do a left there before we go too far out of London into more modern buildings, just so we can preserve the bay windows. You can see a more modern building if we've gone straight on. Plenty of bay windows here for you, though, don't worry. Now then, as I say, we're heading towards Eastcote. We'll come to a little mini roundabout. Eastcote is to the left. We're not going to where the tube station. And again, like Harrow, I think the road we're going to go along is where the old Eastcote would have been before the railway. But once the railway was built, everything was built around the railway, and the centre of Eastcote would have shifted from the lanes to the north, of which we're riding. They may not look like lanes, but they were, of course, once. But these outer areas are where the older parts of Eastcote would have been. And as I say, the population sort of shifted, if you like, or the weight of the population shifted as they built the railway lines out here. Now, these buildings are a little bit more modern, which suggests to you you're sort of kind of just out of reach of that 1930s expansion. So we are right on the periphery of London here, almost on the Hertfordshire borders. But as I say, we're going to drift back into 1930s London soon. As I say, we're going to hit some roundabouts. There we are. Bay windows have resumed normal service for you. I think if you're a window fitter in this part of the world, you probably have to do special training to work out how to do the arc of a bay window. But I think it's a fairly sort of standard bread and butter design of windows in this area, that's for sure. As I say, just going through this residential area, I mean, it's very much a commuter belt. I mean, people live here and commute into London. Lots of people work for the city banks and so on and so forth. The Metropolitan line will take you right into the city. And we have several tube lines, Piccadilly line and Central line. Central line not coming to this area, but we will pass it on this ride. Give you plenty of options of how you get into London and where you get off at the other end. Nice leafy suburbs, as you can see, quite desirable, despite all the houses looking the same. Individuality is not to be encouraged. Although, obviously, over the years, people have adapted them, so they're not always the identical houses they would have been on day one when they were built. So, as I say, shortly going to come up to the roundabouts, the decisive roundabouts where we avoid Eastcote and go round the top and into Ruislip. It's going to be more of the same, but as I say, this is just going to be fast, furious racing. You're hanging on for dear life if you're struggling to stay with the pack, but I can't do much about that. Each race is different. Every race has got a different course. So here we are. This is the definitive roundabout. Left for Eastcote. We're going to go straight on just to circumnavigate around the top of Eastcote rather than actually go into it. As I say, this part of Eastcote will have some slightly older buildings here and there, what's left over from the original Eastcote settlement, Eastcote Village being to the north. There was an Eastcote Manor, which I think got demolished at some point 100 or so years ago. Some of the outbuildings and the gardens are still there. And it houses a very nice cafe that we end some of our cycling rides at. And as I say, it's it's quite pleasant. It's a shame they knocked down the manor, but I think at the time Britain had lots of stately homes and people didn't value them so much, and they were harder to maintain. So as we hit this little part, the cafe is just on the right there over that hedge of the gardens of the old Eastcote Manor House. So this would have been Eastcote Village way back in the day before they built the railway line out here, and the population centre shifted further south to the Eastcote railway station, underground station. So you can see old buildings here from the old Eastcote. Not that one though, that's a little bit newer. The pub looks old though. So this is Eastcote Village as opposed to Eastcote as we know it today. Now we're going to come along here and there's a little bit of a slope before we do a left turn onto Windmill Hill. So when I say that Windmill Hill is nothing more than a minor blip over the peak of a hill we're already on, there is a sort of very, very slow gradual ascent to it starting about here. But I don't think you'll really notice this on RGT, and particularly if you're drafting. I mean, I think you'll just, settle for this. It's gradual and hardly noticeable. The Windmill Hill, when we do turn left and just go over the brow of Windmill Hill, it is, as I say, so short and sharp that I think if you're particularly tired, you might get caught out and drop off. But I think all the strong riders will not drop each other on Windmill Hill. That's the last but one minor little lump, and as I say, I think you'll hardly notice it, so don't build your whole race plan around it, but it's there. It might be worth a little bit of a dig as you get to Windmill Hill. As I say, we're You can probably see from the pictures we're slightly going uphill already as we head towards the turn. It's probably more noticeable now as we're going up a little bit. It's a little bit steeper here, but this isn't. I don't think this will register on RGT. I just don't think you'll notice it. Certainly, when I ride this in real life, I don't particularly see this as anything to change gear for. It's just a gentle rise. As we turn left, I don't really tend to change gear, even when I'm going over Windmill Hill. Whether or not you need to in an RGT race is a slightly different thing. It's to say it's a minor blip. Now we're just coming up. This is the last bit of the gentle rise, and we're going to turn left at this small roundabout, and then we're straight onto the small but possibly significant ascent of Windmill Hill. Here we go. Now you can see, now the trees ahead of us are where the ascent stops, and after that we do a descent, which is about equivalent, although it's slightly longer because they've dug the road to go under a railway bridge. But as this is Ruislip Manor, so as I say, the trees at the top here is all you've got. That's the only space you've got, and you might drop some of the people who are struggling in the pack already, but it's not going to break the group significantly. Now here we are. This is the top of Windmill Hill. As I say, it's actually a much bigger hill. We were already near the top of it. And we come down the other side and into Ruislip Manor. As I say, this descent, again, I mean, it's not long enough to make a lot of difference, but if you are able to power down the descent and break free, you might just lose some people. Say slightly longer than the ascent, but that's only because, as you'll see in a moment, as we go through these traffic lights, the road dips to go under the railway bridge. But it's not a lot of difference. So here we go, Ruislip Manor. Now we're really in the last couple of kilometres here now. This is we're just going to go past these shops, typical of the area. They built the underground stations, built shops around them, and then houses behind the shops. So that communities could be serviced, and the focal point was the railway station, which is why populations built up around them. As I say, we're going to turn right here back into a nice little bay windowed road. In fact, probably the last you're going to see today, because after that we're going to go into Ruislip Gardens and South Ruislip, which is slightly more modern because they were built around the Central Line, which came years after the Metropolitan Railway. So the Metropolitan Line is far older. We've got this sort of 1930s housing built very much around it. But the extension of the Central Line out to Ruislip came much later. And you'll see the buildings are slightly more modern as we stop. As we get to the end of this road, we're going to do a right and left. As we turn left, the buildings get more modern because you're heading into Central Line area, which is more modern than this Metropolitan Line area. So these are the last of the bay windows, so make the most of it. We'll be asking questions later, as if knowledge of bay windows is important. I think I'm not sure what made them famous, but I always had the impression that it was to make them look like country manors and make the houses look more grandiose than they probably really were for the suburban setting of London. But they certainly have that feel of an old country manor house. This area called Ruislip Manor. I don't know if there was a Ruislip Manor house. I suspect there was once upon a time, hence the name. It's quite common to have the word manor after place names in Britain, because there would have been a manor house where the lord of the manor lived and ruled his small local area. Now this is the last of this 1930s development. As I say, we're going to turn right and then immediately left onto West End Road, and it's a sprint from here to the finish. Probably about 1.5k, maybe a little bit more from the finish. Yeah, probably more than 1.5k, nearer to 2. But it's now a sprint all the way to the finish down West End Road through Ruislip Gardens and past the RAF base at Northolt to the Polish War Memorial, built next to the airport, where, of course, many of those gallant Polish airmen fought and flew. So here we are. This is Ruislip Gardens, and you'll start seeing the houses a little bit more modern than the 1930s houses built around the Metropolitan Line. As usual, parade of shops and a pub built around an underground station extension out of London. These have all been fields, so pop up the shops to fit around the new railway station, which is just the other side of this bridge, Ruislip Gardens, the last tube station of the day, if you're looking at your tube maps. And there is a little bit of a gentle incline just as we go past the railway station, which is to the left here. You can see just on your left there's the sign for the tube station. That's the central line. You can see there's a little bit of an incline here just over the ridge by Northolt Airport, which is the Royal Air Force Base, as I say, which the Polish airmen flew from in World War II. There's a gentle incline here. Again, I don't particularly see it as much of a hill when I'm out cycling, and I don't think strong riders are really going to notice this on RGT, but it is there. We're probably a kilometre from home, and so with 1k to go, this rise might just shed you a few riders out of the pack, but I think they'll be the weaker ones anyway, because as I say, this doesn't it's not a noted climb when I'm riding it generally, and I think on RGT, by the time it's smoothed, it's not really going to cause anybody any problems, only those hanging on the back of the pack. But anyway, you do get a gentle descent on the other side as we go past the end of the runway and we go past those traffic lights. We will have to stop our cars if a plane's landing here. The fences on your right there at the end of the runway for the RAF base. And when the planes come in, they stop all the traffic just in case the wheels of the plane catch a tall lorry. I don't think they ever would, but I think it's a precautionary thing. It's not so busy being an RAF base, but there are a lot of commercial flights there, a lot of rich and famous charter flights from their private flights, and of course the royal family and the top politicians all flying in and out of there. So there's not a flight every minute like there is down the road at Heathrow Airport, but we do have to stop momentarily while the plane comes in, just in case one's so low that its wheels catch the top of a lorry. So here we are. This is the final sprint. You should be going hell for leather here as we go through the South Ruislip area. Again, you can see it's much more modern than the 1930s area, because, as I say, the Central Line was extended out to this area much later than the Metropolitan Line was. So this is sprint as we head towards the Polish War Memorial. Just before that, on our left, we've got the Gaelic football ground, the London team. I think it's the only team outside of Ireland that's allowed to enter the All-Ireland Gaelic Football Championships. And don't we know it when they've got a game, because this is it, just coming up on the left. You see some green gates. That's the stadium for the Irish football. And you can't drive anywhere because all the roads get jammed up with the traffic going to watch the top Irish teams playing in England. And I must go down there and watch a game. But here we are. This is the Polish War Memorial. As we spin in, you can see the War Memorial just on your right there. I'm going to spin my bike round so you can get a full view, and you can pay your respects to the Polish airmen that gallantly fought in World War II, and to everybody on both sides who fought in World War II. So that's the Polish War Memorial. Thanks for watching. See you soon.